A single mom inherits a broken gas station, then uncovers a $200 million secret hidden inside. Welcome to Tales by Orion. Let's uncover what really happened. The relentless, shimmering heat of the desert highway blurred the horizon into a wavering, mirage-like line. The air was thick with the scent of hot asphalt, diesel fumes, and the faint, almost sweet, smell of creosote bushes baking under the unforgiving sun. In the heart of this vast, empty landscape, a solitary, sun-bleached structure stood as a testament to forgotten dreams and a bygone era of American restlessness. The Oasis, a crumbling, dilapidated gas station and diner, its paint peeling like sunburnt skin, its once bright neon sign now a skeletal, rusted husk, its very foundations seeming to sigh under the weight of decades of neglect. This was Ilara Vance's inheritance. At 32, Ilara was a woman well acquainted with the quiet, grinding erosion of hope. Her life was a study in beige. A cramped, beige-walled apartment in a nameless, soulless suburb. A beige cubicle in a dead-end data entry firm. A future that stretched before her in an endless, unvarying expanse of beige. She moved through her days with a quiet, almost apologetic efficiency. Her dreams, once vibrant and colorful, now faded to the same muted, practical hue as her existence. She was a single mother, her 8-year-old daughter, Lily, a bright, inquisitive, and fiercely loving spark of light in her otherwise monochrome world. And for Lily, for her future, for the chance to give her a life less beige, Ilara endured. She endured the long hours, the low pay, the soul-crushing monotony of her job. She endured the constant, gnawing anxiety of just making ends meet, of stretching a meager paycheck to cover rent, utilities, and the occasional, desperately needed, pair of new shoes for her growing daughter. The news of her inheritance, delivered via a formal, stiff-looking letter from a solicitor she had never heard of, had been a stunning, almost surreal, bolt from the blue. It was from the estate of her grandfather, a man she had only ever known through faded photographs and her mother's hushed, almost fearful whispers. He had been eccentric, a prospector, a dreamer, a man who had, for reasons no one seemed to understand or perhaps dared to articulate, cut himself off from the world, from his family, from the relentless march of time itself, to live out his days in this desolate, forgotten corner of the desert. The inheritance, the lawyer had so dryly put it, was not a fortune in stocks and bonds, but the property known as the Oasis and all its contents. It was in essence a burden, a liability, a crumbling, junk-filled albatross bequeathed to her by a man she had never known. Her friends, her few remaining family members had all offered the same sensible advice. Sell it, Ilara. Sell it for whatever you can get. Cut your losses. Don't get drawn into that wasteland. But something, a strange, almost illicit, flicker of curiosity, of a long-suppressed, adventurous spirit, had stirred within her. A crumbling gas station. A remote, forgotten place. A legacy from an unknown, enigmatic grandfather. It was the stuff of stories, of mysteries, of a life less beige. The decision to go, to see this strange, unexpected inheritance for herself, was a reckless, impulsive act, a rare deviation from the carefully constructed, risk-averse path she had followed for so long. She took a week off from her soul-crushing job, packed a small bag with practical clothes, a cooler filled with sandwiches and juice boxes for Lily, and a healthy dose of skepticism, and drove. The journey was a gradual shedding of her suburban armor. The relentless gray of the city slowly gave way to a vast, empty landscape of ochre and burnt sienna. The air grew hotter, drier, scented with dust and sage. The silence, broken only by the rumble of passing trucks and the high, lonely cry of a hawk, a profound, almost unnerving contrast to the constant, grinding roar of the metropolis. By the time she reached the turnoff, a dusty, unmarked track that seemed to lead to nowhere, Ilara felt a strange sense of dislocation. She was an outsider here, a city dweller in a world of ancient, sun-bleached rocks and quiet, watchful maces. The gas station, when she finally reached it, was even more dilapidated, more junk-filled than she had imagined. It was a chaotic, almost beautiful testament to a lifetime of obsessive and apparently indiscriminate collecting. The dusty forecourt was a graveyard of rusting, skeletal cars, their paint faded, their chrome pitted, their tires long since rotted away. The diner, its windows clouded with a thick film of dust and grime, was filled with stacks of old newspapers, teetering towers of rusted tin cans, and a strange, eclectic collection of what could only be described as junk. Old radios, broken down televisions, a pile of mismatched hubcaps, a flock of pink, plastic flamingos, their colors faded to a pale, ghostly rose. It was a scene of profound, almost theatrical, decay, a place that whispered of forgotten stories, of faded dreams, of a slow, inevitable surrender to the harsh, unforgiving beauty of the desert. Lily, however, was enchanted. Her eyes, wide with a child's unjaded wonder, saw not junk but treasure. She flitted from one rusted relic to another, her small hands tracing the lines of a faded hood ornament, her laughter echoing in the profound silence of the desert. Alara watched her, a mixture of amusement and a dawning, almost overwhelming sense of despair. What had she done? This was not an inheritance. It was a disaster. A monument to a madman's obsession. A crumbling, worthless pile of junk in the middle of nowhere. She was about to suggest they leave, to cut their losses, to return to the predictable, beige safety of their suburban life, when Lily's excited voice called out to her. "Mommy, look, a secret door." Alara turned. Lily was standing by the side of the old diner, pointing to a small, almost invisible section of the crumbling, stucco wall, a section that seemed different. A faint line, a subtle seam that hinted at something more. A hidden door. A secret. And in that moment, despite her pragmatism, despite her despair, a flicker of something she had thought long dead. Curiosity, adventure, a whisper of a different, more colorful, and perhaps even magical kind of life began to stir within her. The desert, it seemed, held more secrets than she could ever have imagined. And her strange, unexpected inheritance was about to reveal a truth far more valuable, far more profound, than any she had ever dared to dream. This secret door, as Lily had so excitedly proclaimed, was not so much a door as a section of the crumbling stucco wall that had, at some point in the distant past, been meticulously cut, hinged, and camouflaged to blend almost seamlessly with its surroundings. It was a testament to her grandfather's ingenuity, his paranoia, or perhaps both. Alara, her curiosity now a powerful, undeniable force, managed to pry it open with the help of a tire iron she found in the trunk of her own, far more practical car. The door swung open with a groan of protesting, rusted hinges, revealing not a hidden room, but a narrow, dark, and decidedly uninviting set of steep, wooden stairs descending into the earth. The air that emanated from the darkness was cool, damp, carrying the scent of dry, packed earth and something else, something faint, almost metallic, a scent that made the hairs on the back of Alara's neck prickle. "Mommy, can we go down?" Lily asked, her eyes shining with an adventurous, almost reckless excitement. "It's a secret tunnel. A treasure hunt." Alara hesitated. Her rational mind, the part of her that had been so carefully, so diligently cultivated by years of data entry and risk-averse living, screamed at her to close the door, to get back in her car, to drive away from this desolate, strange, and potentially dangerous place. But another part of her, a part she had long thought dormant, the part that had once dreamed of art, of adventure, of a life less ordinary, was intrigued. What secrets had her enigmatic grandfather hidden beneath his crumbling, junk-filled kingdom? What lay at the bottom of these dark, mysterious stairs? "Stay close to me, Lily," Alara said finally, her voice a little shakier than she would have liked. "And don't touch anything." She switched on the flashlight on her phone, its modern, sterile light as stark, almost sacrilegious, intrusion in this ancient subterranean space. She took a deep breath, and, with Lily's small hand clutched tightly in her own, she began her descent into the unknown. The staircase was rickety, its wooden steps groaning in protest under their combined weight. The darkness was absolute, broken only by the narrow, uncertain beam of her phone's light. After what felt like an eternity, their feet finally touched a solid, earthen floor. They were in a small, hand-dug chamber, its walls reinforced with rough-hewn wooden beams, its air cool and still. In the center of the chamber, on a sturdy, hand-built wooden table, sat a single, large, and very old, leather-bound book. It was her grandfather's journal. Its pages, brittle with age, were filled with a dense, looping script, a record of a life lived in profound isolation, yet also, surprisingly, a life of intense intellectual and scientific pursuit. There were sketches of geological formations, detailed maps of the surrounding desert, complex chemical equations, and philosophical musings on the nature of time, of memory, of the Earth's hidden and often misunderstood treasures. As Alara turned the pages, her flashlight beam dancing over the faded, spidery ink, a new, more complex picture of her grandfather began to emerge. He was not just a madman, not just a hoarder of junk. He was a scientist, a geologist, a man who had, it seemed, dedicated his life to a single, all-consuming passion, the study of a rare and apparently incredibly valuable mineral deposit that lay hidden deep beneath his crumbling desert oasis. He wrote of its unique crystalline structure, of its unusual resonant properties, of its potential applications in a variety of high-tech industries, from aerospace to advanced computing. He also wrote of his fear, his paranoia, his deep-seated distrust of the outside world, of the powerful, ruthless corporations that would, he believed, stop at nothing to exploit his discovery, to steal his life's work. "They are coming," he had written, in a final, frantic, almost illegible entry. "I can feel their dissonance, their disruptive energy. I have hidden the true prize. Only one of my own blood, one who understands the silence, the patience of the desert, will be able to find it. The key is not a key. The map is not a map. The truth lies not in what is seen, but in what is unseen." The words sent a shiver down Alara's spine. The true prize? What did he mean? She looked around the small, subterranean chamber. There was nothing else here. Just the table, the journal, and the oppressive, silent darkness. "Mommy," Lily whispered, her small voice echoing in the stillness. "What's that?" She was pointing to a section of the far wall, a section that, in the dim, uncertain light of Alara's phone, seemed to shimmer. Alara moved closer, her heart pounding. The wall was not just earth and rock. Embedded within it, like a seam of otherworldly treasure, was a vein of some strange, crystalline mineral, a mineral that seemed to pulse with a faint, inner light, its multifaceted surface refracting the beam of her flashlight into a dazzling, kaleidoscopic display of color. It was beautiful. It was strange. It was unlike anything she had ever seen. And then she saw it. Tucked into a small, almost invisible crevice in the crystalline vein was a small, canvas-wrapped object. Her hands trembling, Alara reached out and carefully, reverently, removed it. She unwrapped the canvas, and she gasped. It was not a rock. It was not a mineral specimen. It was a key, but not an ordinary key. It was a key made of the same strange, shimmering, crystalline material as the vein in the wall, a key that seemed to hum with a faint, almost imperceptible energy, its surface warm to the touch. This was it, the key that was not a key, the key to her grandfather's secret, the key to the true prize. But what did it open? The question hung in the cool, silent air of the subterranean chamber, a tantalizing and perhaps even dangerous invitation to a mystery that was far deeper, far more complex than Alara could ever have imagined. Her strange, unexpected inheritance was proving to be not just a crumbling gas station, but a legacy, a secret, and a challenge. A challenge that would test not just her courage, but her intellect, her resilience, her very understanding of the world, and of the hidden, often misunderstood treasures that lay buried, waiting to be discovered, just beneath the surface of a harsh, unforgiving, and ultimately profoundly beautiful reality. Alara and Lily emerged from the secret, subterranean chamber into the harsh, blinding light of the desert afternoon. The strange, crystalline key clutched tightly in Alara's hand, a tangible, humming testament to her grandfather's enigmatic legacy. The key, with its otherworldly beauty and its faint, almost palpable energy, felt both like a promise and a warning, a key to a future she couldn't yet comprehend, a future that was as alluring as it was potentially, terrifyingly, dangerous. For the next few days, the key became Alara's singular, consuming obsession. She examined it, studied it, ran her hands over its smooth, warm surface, trying to decipher its purpose, its meaning. It was not a key for any conventional lock. Its shape was too organic, too irregular. It was a key that was clearly meant for something else. She returned to her grandfather's journal, poring over its dense, looping script, searching for clues, for hints, for anything that might illuminate the path to the true prize. The journal was a labyrinth of scientific observations, of philosophical musings, of cryptic, almost poetic, references to the heart of the desert, the song of the stones, the key that unlocks not a door, but a resonance. It was the work of a brilliant and perhaps slightly unhinged mind, a mind that had seen beyond the surface of things, that had understood the subtle, interconnected energies of the universe in a way that defied all conventional understanding. As she read, a new, more complex picture of her grandfather began to emerge. He was not just a geologist. He was a visionary, a man who had discovered something profound, something revolutionary. A new form of energy, perhaps. A new, undiscovered element. A technology that could, in the right hands, change the world. And in the wrong hands, a technology that could be exploited, weaponized, used for unimaginable destruction. His paranoia, his reclusiveness, now seemed less like eccentricity and more like a desperate, and perhaps entirely justified, attempt to protect his discovery from a world he knew could not understand or respect its true potential. His final, frantic entry, "They are coming. I can feel their dissonance," now resonated with a chilling, prophetic accuracy. Whoever they were not just interested in a rare mineral deposit. They were interested in a power, a technology, a secret that was worth killing for. Alara felt a wave of fear, cold and overwhelming, wash over her. She was no longer just the inheritor of a strange, crumbling gas station. She was the guardian of a profound and potentially world-altering secret. And she was utterly, completely alone. Or so she thought. One sweltering afternoon, as she was sifting through the chaotic, beautiful mess of her grandfather's junk-filled diner, searching for, she wasn't even sure what, a clue, a sign, anything, a sleek, black, unmarked sedan, its tinted windows reflecting the harsh, unforgiving sun, pulled up to the dilapidated gas station. Two men, dressed in severe, dark suits, their faces grim, impassive, emerged from the car. They moved with a quiet, lethal efficiency, their gazes sweeping over the crumbling diner, the rusted cars, the general air of decay and neglect, with a proprietary, almost contemptuous air. Alara Vance, the taller of the two men, asked, his voice a low, gravelly rumble, more a statement than a question. "We are representatives of a private consortium with a keen interest in alternative energy sources and in unique geological formations. We understand you have recently inherited this rather remarkable property." Alara's blood ran cold. They were here. Her grandfather's final, terrified premonition, made flesh. She clutched the crystalline key, which she now wore on a leather cord around her neck, hidden beneath her shirt, its gentle warmth a small, comforting presence against her skin. "I'm afraid you are mistaken," gentlemen," she replied, her voice surprisingly steady, her mind racing. "This is just an old, abandoned gas station. There are no unique geological formations here." The man's lips curved into a small, humorless smile, a smile that did not reach his cold, dead eyes. "Oh, I think you know precisely what we are referring to, Miss Vance," he purred, his voice dropping to a confidential, almost menacing whisper. "The crystalline cavern, the resonance, as your grandfather so quaintly called them. We are prepared to offer you a very generous sum for this property, a sum that would allow you and your lovely daughter." He glanced pointedly at Lily, who was playing quietly with a flock of faded pink flamingos nearby, "to live a life of considerable comfort, far from this desolate backwater." It was a threat, cloaked in the guise of a generous offer. They knew everything, or so they thought. They knew about the cavern, but they did not, Elara suspected, know about the key, or about the true prize. "I'm sorry," Elara said, her voice firming, a flicker of defiance in her dark eyes. "But this property is not for sale. It has sentimental value." The man's smile vanished, his expression hardening. "Miss Vance," he said, his voice now cold, flat, utterly devoid of its earlier pretense of charm, "I don't think you understand. We are not making a request. We are extending an opportunity. An opportunity for you to walk away from this situation with your health and your daughters intact. Refusing that opportunity would be unwise." He took a step closer, his imposing figure looming over her, his presence a palpable, physical threat. "Now," he continued, his voice a low, dangerous growl, "why don't you be as sensible, young woman, and show us the way to the cavern? And, more importantly, to the heart of the desert, as your grandfather so poetically described it." Elara's blood ran cold. They knew about the heart of the desert, her grandfather's cryptic reference to the true source of the cavern's power. They weren't just here for the cavern. They were here for its heart. And she knew, with a chilling certainty, that they would stop at nothing to get it. But her fear, her panic, was now overlaid with a cold, clear, righteous anger. These men, with their casual threats, their dismissive contempt, their rapacious greed, would not defile this sacred place. Not while she drew breath. "I don't know what you're talking about," she lied, her voice unwavering, her gaze steady, though her heart hammered against her ribs. The man sighed, a sound of theatrical, almost bored, exasperation. "Very well, Miss Vance," he said. "Have it your way. We can do this the easy way, or the hard way." He gestured to his silent, hulking companion, who took a step forward, his hands flexing, a silent, eloquent promise of violence. In that moment, Elara knew she had to act. She had to use her knowledge, her understanding of her grandfather's work, to turn their own strengths, their own arrogance, against them. "Wait," she said, her voice suddenly, surprisingly calm. "You are right. It would be unwise to refuse your generous offer. But the cavern, its entrance, it is protected by a rather unique security system, one that only I can disarm, a system that responds to the crystalline key. Without it, the entrance is sealed permanently." It was a lie, of course, a desperate, audacious, and utterly brilliant gamble. The men stared at her, then at each other, their expressions a mixture of disbelief, frustration, and a dawning, reluctant curiosity. They were men who understood power, who understood violence. But this was something else entirely. A security system based on a crystal key? It was absurd. It was outlandish. And it was perhaps, just perhaps, true. "Very well, Miss Vance," the tall man said finally, his voice a low, dangerous growl. "Show us. Use the key. Open the door. And if this is some sort of trick, if you are wasting our time, I assure you, you will regret it. Profoundly." Elara met his gaze, her own eyes holding a new, quiet confidence. The game had shifted. She was no longer just the terrified victim. She was the gatekeeper, the guardian of a mystery they could not comprehend. "Of course, gentlemen," she said, her voice a silken caress. "But I must warn you, the resonant frequencies are delicate. They can be unpredictable. In the cavern, it does not take kindly to dissonance. She led them towards the secret entrance, her heart pounding, her mind racing, her desperate bluff the only thing standing between these ruthless men and the sacred, hidden heart of her inheritance. The final, dangerous act of this strange, unexpected drama was about to begin. Alara led the two men to the hidden door in the side of the crumbling diner, her mind a whirlwind of desperate, last-minute calculations. Her bluff about the crystalline key and its resonant frequencies was a wild, almost insane gamble, a flimsy shield against their brutal, single-minded determination. She knew they wouldn't hesitate to use force, to harm her, to harm Lily, to get what they wanted. Her only hope was to outsmart them, to use their own greed, their own arrogance against them. The tall man, his eyes like chips of ice, watched her every move, his hand never straying far from the bulge in his jacket that she now realized, with a sickening lurch, was a holstered firearm. His hulking companion stood a few feet back, his arms crossed, his expression one of bored, menacing indifference. Lily, sensing the palpable tension, had retreated to the relative safety of their car, her small face pressed against the window, her eyes wide with a fear that mirrored Alara's own. "Well, Miss Vance," the tall man growled, his patience clearly wearing thin. "The door. Open it." Alara took a deep, steadying breath, her hand reaching for the crystalline key that hung around her neck. She remembered her grandfather's cryptic words. The key is not a key. The map is not a map. The truth lies not in what is seen, but in what is unseen. What had he meant? What was the true purpose of this strange, beautiful, and now terrifyingly significant object? As her fingers closed around the key, its gentle warmth a small, comforting presence against her skin, an idea, a desperate, audacious, and utterly terrifying idea, began to form in her mind. It was a long shot, a gamble against the very laws of conventional physics, but it was all she had. "The key, gentlemen," she began, her voice surprisingly calm, her gaze fixed on the hidden door, "is not a simple key. It is a resonant amplifier. It does not unlock the door directly. It attunes it to a specific frequency, a frequency that can only be generated by a powerful, sustained, and highly specific source of vibration." She looked up at them, her dark eyes holding a new, almost hypnotic intensity. "I will need your assistance. Your vehicle, gentlemen, its engine. The specific resonant frequency of its engine, at a very precise RPM, is the true key. Without it, the door will remain sealed, and any attempt to force it will trigger a catastrophic structural collapse, a rather permanent security measure designed by my grandfather to protect his work from unwelcome visitors." It was a masterpiece of pseudoscientific gibberish, a desperate, brilliant improvisation born of her own, newly discovered, understanding of her grandfather's work, of his obsession with resonance, with vibration, with the hidden energies of the universe. The two men stared at her, their expressions a mixture of contempt, frustration, and a dawning, reluctant curiosity. They were men of action, of brute force, of tangible results. The idea of a security system based on engine resonance? It was absurd. It was outlandish. And it was perhaps, just perhaps, true. "You are bluffing, Miss Vance," the tall man scoffed, though a flicker of uncertainty now entered his icy eyes. "No," Alara replied, her voice unwavering, her gaze steady. "I am not. My grandfather was a genius. A paranoid genius, perhaps, but a genius nonetheless. He understood things about resonance, about sympathetic vibrations that are still beyond the comprehension of modern science. He designed this place to be impenetrable to anyone who did not understand its secrets, to anyone who brought a dissonant energy to its door." She gestured towards her sleek, black, and very expensive sedan. "Your car, gentlemen, its engine, a masterpiece of German engineering, produces a very specific, very powerful, and very stable resonant frequency. It is the only modern engine, I suspect, with the precise harmonic signature required to attune the locking mechanism. You will need to park it directly in front of the door, as close as possible. And you'll need to maintain a very precise, very steady RPM. I will guide you, and I will use the key to focus the resonance. To unlock the door, the men exchanged a look. Their orders were to acquire the heart of the desert. They had been warned that the old prospector was eccentric, that his security measures might be unconventional. Alara's story, as bizarre as it sounded, held a strange, almost plausible logic, at least within the context of what they knew about her grandfather. "Very well, Miss Vance," the tall man said finally, his voice a low, dangerous growl. "We will indulge your peculiar theatrics. But if this is a trick, if you are wasting our time, I assure you, you will regret it." Profoundly, Alara met his gaze, her own eyes holding a new, quiet confidence. The game had shifted. She was no longer just the terrified victim. She was the conductor, the director, the guardian of a mystery they could not comprehend. "Of course, gentlemen," she said, her voice a silken caress. "But I must warn you, the resonant frequencies are delicate. They can be unpredictable. In the cavern, it does not take kindly to dissonance." She directed the hulking companion, who, with a grunt of grudging compliance, got behind the wheel of the sedan. She guided him as he carefully maneuvered the powerful vehicle into position, its front bumper just inches from the hidden door. She then instructed him on the precise RPM he needed to maintain, a number she plucked from thin air, a number that sounded both scientific and entirely plausible. As the powerful engine hummed, its low, resonant vibration filling the air, a new, almost imperceptible tremor seemed to run through the very ground beneath their feet. Alara, her heart pounding, her mind racing, knew that this was her one and only chance. She stood before the hidden door, the crystalline key held aloft in her hand, its surface now glowing with a faint, almost ethereal light, absorbing, amplifying the powerful vibrations of the car's engine. The two men watched, their faces a mixture of greed, of anticipation, of a dawning, almost superstitious awe. They were about to witness a miracle, or a catastrophe. Alara closed her eyes, her mind focused, her will a laser beam of concentrated intent. She remembered her grandfather's journals, his theories on catastrophic resonance, on the power of a single, sustained, and perfectly attuned frequency to shatter, to destroy, to bring down even the most formidable of structures. She had told the men that the resonance would unlock the door, but she knew, with a chilling certainty, that it would do the exact opposite. It would, if her grandfather's theories were correct, trigger the very structural collapse she had so calmly, so convincingly described. She was not just opening a door, she was setting a trap woven from lies, from desperation, from the strange, brilliant, and now potentially lethal legacy of her enigmatic grandfather. The final, dangerous act of this strange, unexpected drama was about to begin. And the fate of her daughter, of the sacred, hidden heart of the desert, hung in the delicate, precarious balance. The powerful, resonant hum of the black sedan's engine filled the desert air, a low, menacing thrum that seemed to vibrate in Alara's very bones. The crystalline key in her hand pulsed with a faint, otherworldly light, its gentle warmth now a tingling, almost electric heat. The two men watched her, their faces a mixture of avaricious anticipation and a dawning, almost fearful, respect for the strange, incomprehensible power she seemed to wield. Alara knew she had only moments before her desperate bluff was called, before they realized that the door was not opening, that the resonant frequencies were not a key, but a weapon. She closed her eyes, feigning a deep, meditative concentration, her mind racing, searching for an escape, for a way to turn this terrifying, high-stakes gamble into a definitive and survivable victory. She remembered a passage in her grandfather's journal, a cryptic reference to his secondary egress, a back door to the cavern system located, he had written, where the sun sleeps and the scorpion dreams. It was a riddle, a poetic, almost mystical clue, but Alara, whose mind had been sharpened by her grandfather's own unique blend of science and spirituality, knew instinctively what it meant. The sleeping sun, the west. The scorpion's dream, a distinctive scorpion-shaped rock formation she had noticed on her initial exploration of the property. A formation that lay hidden in a small, secluded canyon, about 100 yards from the crumbling diner. That had to be it. The escape route. Her only hope. The resonance is building, gentlemen, she said, her voice a low, dramatic whisper, her eyes still closed, her hand, holding the glowing key, trembling with a mixture of feigned effort and very real, very profound fear. The door. It is beginning to attune. But I must warn you, the initial release of energy can be unpredictable. It would be unwise for you to be standing so close. The tall man scoffed, though a flicker of uncertainty now entered his icy eyes. We are not afraid of a little energy, Miss Vance. Just open the door. As you wish, Alara replied, her voice a quiet, almost sad resignation. But please, for your own safety, stand back. Just a few feet. The initial harmonic discharge can be disorienting. The men, their greed momentarily outweighing their caution, exchanged a look, then, reluctantly, took a few steps back, their gazes still fixed on the hidden door, on the glowing key, on the promise of the unimaginable treasure that lay within. It was the opening Alara needed. In a single, fluid, and utterly unexpected movement, she spun on her heel, her body, once so accustomed to the slow, methodical rhythms of data entry, now moving with a desperate, almost primal grace. She sprinted towards her own, far less impressive car, where Lily still sat, her small face a pale, terrified moon in the dusty window. She wrenched open the driver's side door, her voice a sharp, urgent command. Lily, get down, on the floor, now. Lily, her eyes wide with fear but her trust in her mother absolute, immediately obeyed, scrambling onto the floor of the passenger seat, her small body curled into a tight, protective ball. Alara threw the glowing, crystalline key onto the passenger seat. Then, her heart pounding, her mind a maelstrom of desperate, last-minute calculations, she slammed her foot on the accelerator. Her small, unassuming sedan shot forward, its tires spewing gravel, not towards the main road, but towards the back of the property, towards a small, secluded canyon, towards the scorpion-shaped rock formation, towards her one and only chance of escape. The two men, stunned by her sudden, audacious flight, reacted with a split second of bewildered hesitation, then with a roar of pure, unadulterated fury. The tall man reached into his jacket, pulling out his firearm, a sleek, black, and very deadly-looking semi-automatic pistol. But before he could take aim, before he could fire a low, deep, and profoundly, terrifyingly ominous rumble began to emanate from the ground beneath their feet. The resonant frequency, the powerful, sustained vibration of their own car's engine, amplified perhaps by the strange, unknown properties of the crystalline vein that ran beneath the surface, was having an effect, not on the hidden door, but on the very foundations of the old, crumbling, and structurally compromised diner. The rumbling grew louder, a deep, guttural groan of stressed wood and protesting concrete. A crack, a fine, spidery line, appeared in the stucco wall near the hidden door, then another, and another. The ground beneath the black sedan began to tremble, to shift. The men stared, their faces a mask of dawning, abject terror, as the earth around them began to give way, as the entire, crumbling facade of the old diner began to sag, to groan, to collapse in on itself, a slow, inexorable, and utterly devastating implosion of wood, of plaster, of shattered glass, of a century of decay and neglect, all brought crashing down by the very power, the very arrogance they themselves had brought to this desolate, and now very deadly, place. Alara, glancing in her rearview mirror, saw the cloud of dust, the flash of shattering glass, the final, shuddering collapse of the old diner, and she knew, with a chilling certainty, that she had won. Her desperate, insane bluff had worked. She had turned their own power, their own greed, their own dissonance against them. She didn't know if they had survived the collapse. She didn't care. She had protected her grandfather's secret. She had saved her daughter. And she had, against all odds, reclaimed her own profound and now, undeniably, powerful life. She steered the car into the small, secluded canyon, her gaze fixed on the scorpion-shaped rock formation, her heart still pounding, but now, with a new, exhilarating, and deeply, profoundly triumphant rhythm. The single mother, the data entry clerk, the reluctant inheritor of a junk-filled gas station, had just become something else entirely. A warrior, a survivor, a guardian of a secret that had the power to change the world. In her journey, she knew, with a certainty that resonated in the very core of her being, was only just beginning. The aftermath of the diner's spectacular and providentially timed collapse was a scene of chaotic, dust-choked silence. Alara, her heart still hammering against her ribs, brought her car to a screeching halt behind the scorpion-shaped rock formation, her gaze fixed on the rearview mirror, her breath held in a state of suspended, terrified anticipation. She saw no movement from the cloud of dust and debris that now marked the grave of her grandfather's crumbling oasis. No sign of the two men in dark suits. Had they been consumed? Or had they, by some miracle or some devil's luck, managed to escape? The question hung in the still, hot desert air, a chilling, unanswered enigma. Mommy, Lily's small, trembling voice emerged from the floor of the passenger seat. Are the bad men gone? Alara reached over, her hand stroking her daughter's hair, a gesture of reassurance that she herself did not feel. Yes, baby, she whispered, her voice a little shakier than she would have liked. They're gone. We're safe. But she knew, with a dawning, chilling certainty, that this was not the end. It was merely the beginning. The private consortium these men represented, a group powerful enough to find her, to know of her grandfather's secret work, would not be so easily deterred. They would be back, with more men, with more resources, with a new and undoubtedly more brutal determination to acquire the heart of the desert at any cost. She was no longer just the guardian of a secret. She was a target, and her small, isolated desert sanctuary was no longer a refuge. It was a battlefield. A new resolve, cold, hard, and unshakable, began to form in Alara's heart. She would not run. She would not hide. This was her inheritance, her legacy, her responsibility, and she would protect it, with her life, if necessary. She looked at her grandfather's journal, which lay on the passenger seat beside the still glowing crystalline key. She knew that within its faded, spidery script lay the answers, the knowledge, the power she would need to fight back. She would have to become what her grandfather had been, a scientist, a visionary, a guardian. But she would not be a recluse. She would not hide from the world. She would, instead, find a way to use her grandfather's discovery not for profit, not for power, but for good, for healing, for a new, more harmonious, and more resonant future for all of humanity. It was an audacious, almost impossibly ambitious goal. But Alara Vance, the single mother from the beige, soulless suburbs, the woman who had, in the space of a few terrifying, transformative days, discovered her own profound and utterly unexpected strength, was no longer a stranger to the impossible. The journey ahead would be long, arduous, fraught with danger. The private consortium, with its vast resources and its ruthless, amoral agenda, would be a formidable adversary. But Alara was not alone. She had her daughter, Lily, a bright, resilient spark of hope in the encroaching darkness. She had her grandfather's genius, his legacy, his profound, almost mystical understanding of the universe's hidden energies. And she had the heart of the rose, the crystalline key, the strange, beautiful, and undeniably powerful artifact that seemed to hum with the very music of the cosmos. As the dust began to settle, as the desert sun began its slow, majestic descent towards the horizon, painting the vast, empty landscape in hues of fire and gold, Alara Vance started the engine of her small, unassuming car. She was not running away. She was preparing for the next battle, for the next chapter in her extraordinary and now profoundly meaningful life. The junk gas station was gone, but in its place, something new, something powerful, something beautiful was about to be born. A legacy of hope, of resilience, of a profound and ultimately triumphant connection between a lonely old prospector, his forgotten granddaughter, and the quiet, vibrant, and utterly magical song of the desert stones. Her story is a testament to the enduring power of a quiet truth, a profound listening, and the unwavering belief that sometimes the most magnificent inheritances are not of wealth, but of purpose, and that the most crumbling of ruins can be rebuilt, transformed into a shining beacon of hope, of innovation, and of the profound, redemptive beauty of a life lived in the full, glorious, and unapologetic expression of its true, vibrant colors. If you ever feel that your own life has become a crumbling, junk-filled ruin, remember Alara Vance. Remember that beneath the surface of even the most desolate of landscapes, there may lie a hidden and profoundly beautiful treasure waiting to be discovered. All it takes is the courage to look beyond what is seen, to listen to what is unseen, and to find the key, not just to a hidden cavern, but to the vast, untapped, and ultimately magnificent potential that lies within your own heart.